Support for this podcast comes from Boston University's Questrom School of Business, presenting the Is Business Broken podcast, featuring conversations about the role of business, stakeholder relations, and government at bu.edu/Questrom or wherever podcasts are available.
WBUR Podcasts, Boston.
I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. Carrie Jung, WBUR education reporter, and sometimes fill-in host for The Common, I guess, huh?
Yeah. I'm excited to be on the other end of the interview this time. But yeah, glad to be back.
Yeah, welcome back indeed. So, Carrie, we got you here because we want to talk about early childhood education. That's because last week, Governor Maura Healey signed a $56 billion state budget for the fiscal year of 2024, which actually began July 1st. So somebody somewhere missed a deadline.
Oh, yeah. I feel like it's a deadline the state always misses every year. We're always kind of into August before we get something.
So I've been told. But Carrie, we want to talk with you about the state of early childhood education and also childcare. You know, they're all wrapped up together because you and some other WBUR reporters did this extensive feature last summer. And you looked into the cost of childcare. I mean, the cost of it from the family's perspective and from the provider's perspective. I mean, you went in pretty deep, right? So I want to start off by having you tell us right now in 2023, what is the state of childcare and early education? And start off with the cost to families.
Yeah, so if I could simply put the state of early childhood education and childcare, I would say that it's a sector that is becoming stronger as far as providers go, but it's also a sector that is slowly becoming a little bit more affordable for families. It's moving in the right direction.
Okay.
However, for the average family, childcare is still something that's kind of insanely expensive. So the average cost of infant care, the most recent numbers we have, so in the state it costs about $21,000 a year for an infant. That boils down to $1,700-ish a month.
Yeah, that's a
To
lot.
me, that feels like college tuition-y or, another rent or mortgage payment, albeit kind of an expensive one. Then if you go to toddlers are slightly cheaper, I guess, to care for. There's fewer adults required to be at their side, observing them for safety reasons. So they're a little bit more affordable. That's $15,000 a year or about $1,200 a month. And that is according to a recent report from the Rennie Center for Education Research and Policy.
Wow. What about the cost to providers? They're not exactly making bank over here, right?
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. It sounds like it's a super expensive service. Where is all of my money going? But really, a lot of providers run on very, very thin margins. So thin that, in order to not price out families, that they can't afford to pay their workers very much at all. In 2019, the median wage for a childcare worker was about $14 an hour. That has changed a lot since the pandemic, and especially because of, budget allocations and extra investment from the state, that average has increased kind of significantly. I've seen up to $23 an hour on some job boards lately. That's not totally the norm. The average is around $16 an hour, but it's still an increase. So I would say with some of these recent investments from the state, with more money going towards the Department of Early Education and Care, that the industry is getting stronger. It's not operating on razor-thin margins so much anymore.
Okay, well, let's talk about some of those investments. How is the state addressing some of these issues in this year's budget?
So this year, in the budget that the governor signed, there's about $1.5 billion going towards early education and childcare. And now that is an increase from the year before, which was about $1.2 billion. And if you compare that to pre-pandemic, it's pretty sizable. I reached out to the Mass Budget and Policy Center and talked to Colin Jones, who is kind of a policy expert when it comes to money and education. And he compared kind of pre-pandemic to the budget now, and here's how he described it.
It's not very normal that an area of the budget increases by 70% in 3 years, and that's exactly what's happened with early education and care. So I think, and sure you could talk to folks in the State House directly, but they would say, "Man, we've really made a lot of progress," and they have.
70% in 3 years, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And they're doing a lot with it, really. So the majority of that money, about $475 million, is going to this grant program. It's called Commonwealth Cares for Children. If you talk to policy wonks about this, they'll probably call it the C3 program. But essentially, these are grants that operators, that child care center directors, or if you run a family child care center, which is like in-home child care, those providers can apply for these grants, and they can be used for pretty much anything, whether it's extra supplies, toys, paying for increases in salaries. That's where a lot of this money has gone. Basically, it's a stabilization fund, and it was something that was started during the pandemic just to help people not close, so there wasn't a huge crisis.
Right.
I spoke with Lauren Kennedy about this. She's with the group Neighborhood Villages. It's a childcare advocacy group. And she kind of described how providers, business owners really think about this money.
Ask any early education and care provider, those who operate the programs day in and day out, ask the family child care providers, and they will all tell you that this has been a game changer. It needs to become permanent, and it's their preferred way of receiving public dollars.
Well, are these investments permanent?
That's a great question. Right now, they are not. They are dependent on, budget allocations every year. So that is the reason why the big advocacy group, the Common Start Coalition, is pushing to get, it's a kind of a mouthful, an act to expand access to high quality, affordable early education and care.
Okay.
Essentially, it is like an affordable early education bill. But we've seen a lot of what is in that bill be kind of preemptively put into this current budget. One of the recommendations in that is financial assistance for early education and care teachers, to use towards their own childcare. And that allotment stood out to me because I remember when we were doing the childcare series, I talked to a teacher. Her name was Kaya Savannah, and I asked her how she afforded childcare, and she said it was a struggle, but here is her describing how she worked it all out.
The last decision was to cut my hours. Cutting my hours meant getting paid less, but it allowed me to qualify for a subsidized slot so I can afford a slot for my child.
So basically what she was saying here was she made just over what, a subsidized slot in childcare would qualify for. So in order to do that, she had to lower her income just a little bit so that she could reach that threshold with the state to afford it. And so this kind of thing makes it a lot easier for childcare providers, teachers like Kaya, to be able to stay in the industry. The fact that all of these things that are in the bill are showing up in the budget, even though it didn't pass last year, jury's still out if it'll pass this year. But really, I talked to a couple advocates who were like, yeah, we think this is great progress. We feel like we're moving in the right direction. So overall, everyone's pretty pleased.
We're going to take a break, but we'll be back with more from Carrie.
Politics has never been stranger or more online, which is why the politics team at Wired is making a new show, Wired Politics Lab. It's all about how to navigate the endless stream of news and information and what to look out for. Each week on the show, we'll dig into far-right platforms, AI chatbots, influencer campaigns, and so much more. Wired Politics Lab launches Thursday, April 11th. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. So that's early education and childcare. This budget has quite a few education investments in it, right?
It does, yeah.
Let's talk about some of these other education investments real quick. What else in this budget have you seen that's piqued your interest?
Well, the big one is the free lunch program. And so that essentially makes universal school meals, which means regardless of your income level or anything like that, that you have access to free breakfast and lunch at school as a K-12 student. That is here with us because of a $171.5 million investment from the state. And this, I think, is actually an interesting budget allocation for a couple reasons. Number one, it continues this pandemic era investment, but it also makes Massachusetts the 7th state to offer universal free school meals to all students. The other thing I'm nerding out about with the free school meals is that this is a permanent budget allocation.
Mm-hmm.
This is made permanent through something known as, it was written in as an outside section of the budget. And that basically means you kind of amend a pre-existing general law so that this budget can stay in perpetuity. The standalone legislation for free school meals has not passed yet. However, this is now the law of the land because of this outside section of the budget. So, if you're kind of Beacon Hill nerd like I am, I thought this was a really interesting way to, turn a policy into something permanent.
And that goes into effect this coming school year?
That is this coming school year, yeah.
Wow, look at that. And tell us about some of the investments being made for higher education.
Yeah, so there is a $50 million allocation toward free community college for residents who are 25 and older. And included in that is $38 million of free community college programs for any student who wants to pursue a nursing degree. As we know, that profession lost a lot of people during the pandemic, and so this is sort of a way to encourage more people to get into the field.
Got it. Well, Carrie.
Daryl.
Thank you so much for coming through to the Common and sitting as our guest. And
Thanks,
also,
Daryl.
you know what?
Yeah,
Thank you
this
for
was
holding
fun.
it down while I was away. Really appreciate that.
That was fun too. Yeah, I'm glad you got a break.
That's WBUR education reporter Carrie Jung. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for listening to The Common. If you're enjoying the show, please head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts, especially if it's Apple or Spotify, and rate and review us. We would really, really appreciate it. And thank you ahead of time. Also, if you want to get in touch with us, feel free to hit us up on Instagram at WBUR The Common, or send us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Daryl C. Murphy, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.